Hello, and welcome to Politics at Jack and Sam's, the podcast that slaps you round the face on election morning, gives you some coffee, and shouts at you about last night's election results.
My name is Sam Coates from Sky News, and with me, as every morning, is Jack Blanchard of Politico. At time of speaking, it's just gone 6:30, and we can pretty much give you everything, all the key headlines of this phenomenal general election day.
And we're going to do it in about 15 minutes because I have just finished editing the London Playbook email. Sam is about to dash off and go on live TV, and we have this short window to talk to you about everything that happened last night. And it has been a historic night for the Labour Party, as you probably know. Keir Starmer looks like he has won a majority on the scale of Tony Blair's famous election victories in 1997 and 2001. It is a different country we're waking up to this morning. The Labour Party is all dominant and the Tories are in disarray. Sam, are you shocked by the results we're seeing?
This is a monumental change of power on a scale that we've only had twice in my lifetime. Sky called the result early at about 4:42 a.m. and we now have a new Prime Minister in waiting who effectively has a blank political check. In other words, a majority of around 170, which is a phenomenal achievement. It was something that as recently as 3 years ago seemed impossible that he could even win this election. A year ago, we were talking about a hung parliament. But now Keir Starmer has a mandate for change. But, Jack, it is an incredible result because it has been off the back of the Labour Party getting barely any more votes than they got last time. At time of speaking, the Labour share of the vote up less than 2%, yet they're getting 2/3 of the seats and a phenomenal total. The story of the night has been the complete collapse of the Conservative Party, breaking all sorts of records in terms of the percentage share of the vote, of a drop of any party ever in an election, lowest number of seats ever. And Rishi Sunak now, in electoral terms, I think can be called the worst Tory leader in history. And in this punishment-beating election, this revenge election, a desire to punish incumbents, particularly the Tories, but we'll also talk about the SNP later, is the dynamic driving factor, but has put Keir Starmer in number 10.
Our weird electoral system throws up some weird electoral quirks, and you have put your finger right on it there, Sam. The numbers are what's going to matter over the next 5 years. Keir Starmer has total dominance over the House of Commons. He can do whatever he wants. He is not going to be losing votes, whatever he decides to do. But there are so many different subplots to how we got here. This is not an enormous surge of love for the Labour Party. As Sam's just said, this is a collapse for the Conservatives. There is a huge surge of support for Reform UK. They've picked up millions of votes around the country. They have cost Conservative MP after Conservative MP their seats. The Liberal Democrats are back in a big way. We've been talking about this on the podcast every day, but they are going to win dozens and dozens of seats. They are the biggest third party in Parliament now, and they really matter again. The SNP have completely collapsed. Years of dominance in Scotland is over. They are way down. And there is this pro-Palestinian surge that has happened as well. At the time of recording, there are going to be as many pro-Palestine protest candidates as there are Reform UK candidates. And so the picture is far more complex than it appears from the headline, which suggests that this has been a huge surge for Labour. It hasn't. But the end result is what matters. And Keir Starmer is in such a powerful position today, tomorrow, and for the years to come.
He will go down as an incredible political figure for having turned around his party. But let's take a step even further back, Jack. For me, one of the most incredible things now is how volatile our political system is. Just 4.5 years ago, almost 5 years ago, Boris Johnson was thought to have destroyed the Labour Party. He had unhooked Labour's relationship with its heartlands. He had decimated the relationship between the Labour Party and Leave voters, which of course made up 52% of the electorate back, or of the voting public back in 2016. And Keir Starmer has managed well, he certainly managed to repair parts of that bond in a way and at a speed that people did not predict. It is a huge victory, I think, for Keir Starmer's campaign team in the way that they have targeted this election campaign, particularly on people who voted Brexit and then voted Tory in 2019, these so-called hero voters who do now appear to be to have stayed loyal and stayed in the fold of the Labour Party. The way that the Labour Party has distributed its votes all around the country, quite clearly, they got the right people voting for them in constituencies all around the country. But what you don't have anymore, really, I think, is party loyalty. The big lesson of where we are in politics when you compare 2017, 2019 and today's historic result is that you get one go, and if you don't do what the public like, they're more interested in punishing the person at the top than they are in stopping and waiting to evaluate who they really, really love and are enthusiastic about and want to vote for.
I've just been sitting alongside my London Playbook colleague, Dan Bloom, who's been finishing today's email, and he had in front of him the email I wrote in 2019 on election morning, Sam, which pronounced boldly that Boris Johnson was going to be Prime Minister for the next 10 years, exactly as you say, with the kind of numbers he was on. That's what was supposed to happen in the old world, but this is not the old world anymore. So I am not going to sit here and tell you that Keir Starmer has a decade in power, although by any normal measure of British history, someone winning this size of majority, that is not going to be overturned in one parliament. No one would expect that, but I'm not going to make any bold predictions about the future now. But for the time being, Keir Starmer is in the strongest position imaginable. Let's quickly talk you through his day, because part of this is supposed to be a forward-looking podcast, Sam. He will be in Downing Street around lunchtime after Rishi Sunak has been to see the King first with his family. Rishi Sunak will depart, then Starmer will be appointed Prime Minister at the Palace. He will return and make a speech at Downing Street, and then we should start seeing cabinet appointments through the afternoon. Keir Starmer has at least 2 empty spaces around his cabinet to fill. Excitingly for Westminster watchers, Thangham Debonair was well beaten in Bristol by the Green Party candidate, and much more unexpectedly, frankly one of the shocks of the night, Jonathan Ashworth, the Labour attack dog, has also lost his seat. I don't think anybody in Labour saw that coming, and that is because of this surge of protest votes about Gaza that has happened around the country. And so, you know, some of those Labour Party big hitters who've been brought in by Keir Starmer might find themselves promoted more quickly than they had expected. That is just one of many shock results around the country. Amazing to see Ian Duncan Smith clinging on after the Labour Party completely cocked up their opposition to him and completely split the vote between essentially their old candidate and their new one. Amazing to see Jacob Rees-Mogg losing his seat, and I don't think anybody really expected that would actually happen. I certainly didn't expect that would actually happen, but he is gone, and so they keep falling. The other thing we need to look at is which of the potential Tory leadership contenders, Sam, have clung on and which haven't. I know you've been, I don't know if I should say this on the podcast, but certainly telling people at parties that Robert Jenrick is a pretty good bet for Tory leader. Well, he has indeed clung on to his seat, as has James Cleverly, Suella Braverman, and of course Kemi Badenoch. But other possible contenders have gone, including Penny Mordaunt, crucially, who was seen as the great hope of the moderates, although they were increasingly doubtful she'd keep her seat, and Grant Shapps has gone as well. So where that leaves the Tory leadership contest that is about to begin and we're about to be plunged into remains to be seen.
One of the things to trigger the Tory leadership contest, quite self-evidently, is that Rishi Sunak has to resign as Tory leader as well as Prime Minister. Now, about 45 minutes ago, he indicated that he would, because of the election result, be seeing the King and resigning his government position. I expect him to stand down as Tory leader, but I'm not certain about that. In the last 24 hours, I have picked up quite a big and angry debate inside the Conservative Party between people who want different lengths of timetable, different amounts of time to reflect, because, you know, even though not only did the Tories manage to get into 3 figures, which some had doubted, but they're probably going to be up between the 130 and 150 seats mark, which, in the words of one leading Tory strategist, they just went, well, I'll take that, incredible as that sounds, because it's a stonking loss. But this is an existential moment for the party, and there is a sort of almost a clear choice. And you could hear it on the airwaves this morning. Suella Braverman suggesting that the party moves much more into reform territory, whereas Kemi Badenoch suggesting that maybe it shouldn't do that. And it sort of needs, having the process of the last 5 years has been the Tory party losing its roots, losing a sense of direction when it comes to economics, when it comes to business policy, when it comes to what it stands for. You can't solve that in 3 months, I'd venture. But the question is, do the Tory party try, having lost 11 cabinet ministers at time of speaking and quite clearly plunged to the lowest proportion of the vote in British history for them. What does it do with itself and how does it want to do it? None of this is clear right now.
It's not, but what is clear from conversations I've had is that those in the more moderate end of the party want this leadership contest to go long. They think they have a better chance of convincing Tory members not to lurch to the right if they have more time to do it. They think the lessons of history show that parties reeling from these kinds of election defeats tend to knee-jerk reaction, head quickly into their comfort zone. We saw it with Labour in 2015 with Jeremy Corbyn, and we saw David Cameron avoid that happening in 2005 after that Tory leadership contest went long. It went all the way essentially to Christmas after a springtime election defeat, and that is what the moderates want to happen. But whether that's possible and how that's possible remains to be seen.
Hang on, Jack. I just need to stop you there. Liz Truss has just lost her seat. She's coming in second place behind Labour.
Amazing.
The
my goodness. Liz Truss is
Prime Minister
out. Can you believe it, Sam?
The question is, does that mean that the Conservatives feel they need to draw a line under her type of politics, Trussonomics, the kind of things that went into the failed mini budget, or is there a groundswell push from party members to keep the ghost of Liz Truss alive inside the Conservative? But that is a mammoth result.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have our moment. Were you up for Truss? It has happened. There's always a moment. I can't believe it's happened while we're sat here recording this podcast. Liz Truss is out. We sent one of our reporters to Norfolk last week to snoop around there, and people were saying this could happen, but we never really believed it was true. Sam, Liz Truss, who was Prime Minister barely any time ago at all, and yet who is heavily blamed by so many in the Tory party for what has just happened. Meet her nadir. What will she do now? Off to America, I imagine. Oh, I can't believe it. That's a fabulous piece of news from a story point of view. Sam, tell me.
Right, we just need to race around the rest of the country. Briefly, Scotland. My goodness, the Scottish National Party's hegemony is completely over. Looking at I think that's 8 seats that they currently have at 10 to 7 in the morning. You've got to ask whether John Swinney is about to become another casualty, another First Minister who bites the dust. That is a utterly disastrous result. There is still some enthusiasm for independence, but no enthusiasm for the party that champions it. That's going to be a lot of soul-searching.
Cannot overstate how amazing that is. Independence, people used to say that was now inevitable for Scotland in the coming years, where we were just a few years ago. Nicola Sturgeon looked unstoppable as Scottish leader only a couple of years ago, and now they're reduced to this tiny little party, and Anas Sarwar, Scottish Labour leader, becomes the most important man in that country overnight, and surely now Labour on course to win Holyrood in 2026 as well. What a turnaround. Just like with Keir Starmer, you could not have seen this coming this quickly only a couple of years ago, and that's exactly what you're saying again, Sam. The damage to the incumbents, the sudden shifts in voting patterns, not happening over years and years, but over literally a matter of months. Absolutely jaw-dropping stuff as well.
We need to talk about Northern Ireland. Sinn Féin has become the largest Westminster party in Northern Ireland. So that's another seismic result that reflects the position in the Northern Ireland Assembly. There was just a little bit of a debate about whether Sinn Féin change their stance and actually start sending MPs to Westminster. Currently, Sinn Féin MPs do not do that. They publicly denied that they do that, but our understanding is that there is a debate, and in one big shock result, the DUP's Ian Paisley has lost North Antrim, which was deemed to be the DUP's safest seat. So that is an incredible and a big change as well.
Sam, we've got 3 more minutes before you're supposed to be live on air for about the next 24 hours. So let's quickly say that in Wales, the Conservatives have been completely wiped out. I think Gamblegate probably didn't help them in one of those seats, but that is a disaster for them there as well. They've got a huge comeback to try and get any seats in Wales again next time round.
And it means that the chief whip, Simon Hart, is no longer there. So discipline inside the party hard. The party chairman, Rick Holden, did hang on, but the chief whip doesn't. This is a Tory party starting from scratch.
Rick Holden hung on by 20 votes. Unbelievable. I think there would have been a few Tories pretty gleeful to see him lose after that chicken run from the northeast, but he is back in. And we need to talk in the last minute or two. We've got about Nigel Farage, Sam, on his 8th attempt is a member of Parliament. He will be hanging around the House of Commons bars next week. He's finally made it. He will have a very small band of Reform UK MPs, but don't let that fool you. There is a massive wave of support for reform across this country. We've had reporters from Politico out on the ground all around the country. Every day we've been hearing it. People are voting reform. People are voting reform, and they have. And Farage will see this as just the start for his party. He is looking at the far-right surge, not that he would call his own party as far-right, but across Europe. He is looking at what's happening in America, and he believes that we're a few years behind that, but he can do the same thing here. And who are we to tell him that he's wrong, Sam? Because Reform are coming second in lots of seats. They have put the wind up the Tories. They have cost the Tories dozens of seats, and Farage is now in Parliament and with a band of mates, and he has a base to build on in the years to come.
So the headlines: a massive Labour landslide. Can Keir Starmer fulfil that promise of change, with the public basically folding their arms and then going, go on, impress us? No idea where a Conservative Party that has broken record in every direction in a bad way goes right now. But I can give you a statistic, Jack. 43%. That's the percentage share. That's how much of Liz Truss's vote she lost. She lost almost half of her voters in Norfolk. And one more prediction and projection. This is going to be a difficult, angry, ugly Parliament, with those clashes, I think, that are inevitable, temperature rising on the right and the left over issues like migration, issues like the Middle East. There are going to be loud voices, independents like Jeremy Corbyn, who won in Islington, and these other smaller parties wanting to make their mark against a huge Labour number of seats for Labour. That's going to mean shouting loud. I think it could be quite a This next Parliament to come is going to be really worth watching, and not necessarily the most pleasant thing in the world.
We were supposed to stop making this podcast every day once the election ended, but look, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going tomorrow morning. It's Saturday, but, bugger it. Let's do it. We'll be back tomorrow. Sam is waving at me because he is itching to run into the Sky News studios. I'm going to let you go, Sam, but listeners, do tune back in Saturday morning, because we will have a new Prime Minister. We will have a new cabinet.
Bye, everybody.
And we will have a new government in place. I can see Sam Coates has just run out of the room and left me talking to you all on my own. So I'm going to say goodbye for now, but see you back tomorrow morning for another dramatic day in British politics. Thanks so much for listening. Cheers. Bye-bye.